Amazing. So we'll just give it a minute to let some folks in.
Mhm. Hopefully someone wants to watch.
Oh yeah, we've got people joining. It just takes a minute for Zoom to let everyone in. Hi to everybody that's on the call nice and early and ready to get going. Welcome to our final Acts of Connection event for 2024. And I think we've left the best till last. I'm so excited for this session. So we are on the Windy Acres farm in Toowoomba today with the amazing Alicia, who's going to be telling us all things bees. So that's Alicia there in the pink suit. And behind the camera is the wonderful Jess, who is all suited up as well. Oh, there we go. She's got her finger out of the suit for the sake of being able to push buttons on a screen. So putting her safety at risk for you all today. So I'm not going to say too much. I'm just here to pass on any questions. So as we're going through the session, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please pop it in the chat. Or you could use the Q&A function, but I think we'll be able to handle anything coming through the chat. So pop your questions in there and I will relay them to you and we will answer everything that you want to know about bees. So that's enough for me. Yeah. Over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, and thanks so much for having me today. I've been really excited. I was so bummed that we had to cancel a couple of weeks ago, and we were a little bit worried this morning because we had a bit of a shower of rain, but it's actually not too bad now. So I'm Alicia. This is my farm. This is my lavender farm. Excuse the weeds. We're feeding the bees. So we have 20 bee. I have 20 beehives here, and I was just telling to Rhiannon that we have a lot of sponsored beehives. So the idea behind the sponsored beehives is it gives businesses or even families a chance to do their little bit, and then they don't have to maintain the hives. It's all up to me. So we're working on, this is our Kumon hive today. And what we're going to be doing is splitting a hive. So at this time of the year and even in early spring, beekeepers are required to maintain their hives and stop their bees from swarming. So swarming is a natural thing that bees do. I'm just going to work as I talk.
Yeah, and I'll just get Jess, you're just covering the camera a little bit with
with your
oh, there we
glove.
go.
Do you want to zoom in, Jess, or come in close? So swarming is something that bees naturally do when their numbers increase. So obviously it's a bit like families when the kids get old enough, they move out of home and start their own household. So bees do the same when they run out of room. But if you don't get to them in time and the bees do swarm, what happens is then they become an unmanaged hive and they become feral bees. And the risk with feral bees is that they're not being maintained, they're not being kept in a good, healthy condition, and that's when disease can take over, and that's when we get things like varroa mite and hive beetle and American foul brood. So it is a requirement that all beekeepers manage their hives and prevent swarming. So today we are going to split this hive and create a new hive, and so we're forcing them to create a new home. So all of my hives, and I did just want to say from the outset, all beekeepers do things differently. This is just my way of doing things. This is what I've learnt and what works best for me. And depending on where people live, they might do things differently. So this is not gospel. This is just my way. So I run 2 boxes. So this bottom box is where the queen is and where the babies are. And the top box is called the honey super. That's where all my honey frames are. So I'll give you a little look at what's in here. This is just free combing. So the bees like to fill any space to prevent disease. See this nice fresh comb here? Just want to eat it. And so they've just done their own thing here. So if I pull this out.
Wow.
So I don't know whether you can see, that's full of nectar. So nectar is straight from the flowers, and this is what happens when you go into the hives. the bees are like naughty kids. They quickly try and drink up all the nectar so that you can't take it. So you'll see all their little bottoms hanging out because they're trying to drink up the nectar. The reason why this is still nectar, oh, there's one that's capped there. So when it reaches, when the water evaporates out of it enough, the bees will cap the cell with wax to seal it in like a bit of a Tupperware container. That's ripe honey in there. But when there's a lot of moisture in the air like there is at the moment, they won't be capping honey because there's too much water content in it. Look at all that beautiful nectar. Give it a week of hot weather and that will be honey. I'll show you the next frame because they've actually capped some of the honey in that one. Can you hear them revving up? They're talking to each other. So bees communicate via sound and smell.
We're not actually hearing them.
Oh, you can't hear them. I'll get in close. Can you hear that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Very fair in your voice.
This is all nectar and this is capped honey. So once they've capped this whole frame front and back, that's when it will be ready to be harvested. Yeah, it's like quickly drink it all up. They're trying to take it from us. And I'm quite conservative in the amount that I harvest. I'm not going to go in and take all the frames of honey. Like if all of these frames were ready to harvest, I wouldn't actually take them because then they'll have no food. So these outer frames are ones I put in last week.
Is there a rule of like how much you can take while still the bees have enough for themselves?
Yeah, I only ever take 2 frames out of an 8-frame box. Any more than that because there's a lot of bees in there. Can you get in there, Jess? There's a lot of bees in there, and if they have a week of rainy weather, they're not going to be able to get out, so they'll need that honey in there or the nectar in there to keep them going. So have a look at this frame. This is wax foundation. This is what we put on to give them a bit of a guide to start, and this is what we call drawing out the frame. So they've started to draw out the frame with the cells. And on the cells, you would have noticed, you might not have, all of the cells are angled down like this. If they were straight, the nectar and the honey would just drip straight out. So they're quite clever in the way that they build the cells so that the nectar and the honey doesn't drip out. So it probably won't take them long to draw that one out. Okay, I'm going to take the honey super off because what we're actually wanting to do is take some eggs out of the bottom box to start our new hive. And so just to give you
naturally put the eggs and the queen in the bottom box, or that's something
yeah, I'm about to show you. Yeah, about to show you how, because the reason we don't want eggs in amongst our honey when we're harvesting. So this metal grate here is called a queen excluder. So the queen is the biggest bee in the hive. So she can't actually get through here. All the worker bees can get through here, but she can't get through here. So it means that she has to stay in the bottom box, and that's where she's laying her egg. And that's how I run mine. Sometimes people run it that the queen is in the top box and the honey's in the bottom box. But for me, this honey super can get really heavy. So each frame, if it's full of honey, can be about 2 to 3 kilos. So 2 to 3 kilos times 8, it's pretty heavy. So I'm going to take the queen excluder off and see how it's all stuck together. All this here, this is what we call propolis. People have probably heard of the word propolis, and it's a mixture of wax and resin. So it's bee glue. It's really super sticky. This all here, this is all propolis. Okay, just going to give them a little smoke. So the idea of using the smoker is that it masks their pheromones so they can't communicate with each other. So we're not actually making them sleepy. We're just masking those pheromones that make them communicate with each other.
And I'm assuming that communication at the moment would be danger.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, danger. And I know you can't hear them, but they're quite like they revved up. Would you say, Jess, it's like revving up an engine when you first open the hive? They're like, whoa, here we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at some frames. The frames that I'm looking for will have eggs, and we call it brood. So I'm just going to see and hear how they've joined the frames together with propolis. They just like to fill every possible space because it's easier. Sticky. Easier for them to keep the temperature regulated as well. Okay. So this is a beautiful looking frame. So see all the bit that looks like sponge? All of this here, this is all brood. So this is where the babies are. And up here, this is the capped honey. They've got a little bit of a store. And I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see. Oh yeah, see down here, this is pollen. Pollen is, and in here, I get so excited when I see this. Sorry, I'm just going to be talking a mile a minute because this is actually really exciting. They store the pollen in close to where the babies are because the pollen is what they're feeding the eggs as they're developing, or bee bread. So it's a little mixture of pollen and nectar. So they keep it in the pantry nice and close to where all the babies are, and that's what they're feeding them. All these bees on top here, these are nurse bees. They're the ones that are feeding. See, this one's feeding a baby. So they grab some pollen and then they put it in there. See if the little larva in there? So they feed, they feed the larva bee bread, and then they cap it up. So this is like an egg. They've closed the egg up, and then they'll keep cooking, and then they'll hatch out. I was going to see if we have any little hatchlings coming out. I don't think we do. So that's actually a really, really good looking frame. Lots of larvae. See this here? This is a queen cell. So sometimes the bees, can you see that? Oh, there's another one up here.
Big chunky one.
Yeah, I think they look like peanuts. I'm just going to have a look inside. Yeah. Oh, hang on. There's nothing in there. Sometimes the bees just make them as practice, but oftentimes they make them if they're planning on swarming. So when they're planning on swarming, they'll make the swarm cells down the bottom here. And what they're doing is they're creating a new queen for the current hive. So what happens then is the old queen will leave the hive with approximately half of the bees, and they will go off and find another place to live. And the new queen that's hatching out of that little cell will become the queen of the old hive. I'm not going to take this cell because what I'm looking for, even though there's lots of larvae, I actually need a tiny little egg in those cells to make my split. And the reason being is all of the eggs that are laid are fertile eggs. They're considered fertile, so they're female eggs. So all worker bees are female. And the reason I need an egg is that they can create their own new queen from an egg. So the way they create, sorry if I'm going too fast, just pull me up if it's not making sense. The way they create a queen versus just creating a normal worker is in the first 3 days after the egg is laid, they feed, the nurse bees will feed that egg royal jelly. Oh, look, there's a bee hatching in here. I just saw her little antenna. Yeah. Can you see her little antenna coming out? Can you see that? She's nibbling a little hole out. Oh, there's a little antenna pointing out there every now and then.
We'll take your word on it. There's just a lot of bee movement.
Okay, sorry. So they feed that egg royal jelly for the first 3 days after it's laid. Then after those 3 days, they start feeding that bee bread like I was talking about. If they want to create a queen, they continue to feed that egg and that developing larva royal jelly. And the queen is then fed royal jelly for the rest of her life. And that's why she lives for 3 to 5 years compared to, say, 40 days, because she's eating royal jelly. So I think you can actually buy royal jelly as like a health supplement. To get that royal jelly, I don't know if anyone's ever tried it, to get that royal jelly, people actually have to kill the nurse bees and pipette that royal jelly out of their abdomen. So a lot of dead nurse bees to get your royal jelly.
That sounds horrific.
It does, but it's a real thing apparently. See this one over here? So see how all this brood is flat? They're all worker bees. Sometimes the queen will lay non-fertile eggs and they become drones. They become the boy ones. And the boys are a lot bigger. See those little lumpy ones? They're going to become drone bees. The drone bees, unfortunately, I don't know if we've got any guys watching. The drone bees are not in the hive all year round. It's usually only at the beginning of spring, because the only use for the drone bees is to, I say to the kids in my kids' classes, is to go and find a girlfriend and start a new family. The drone bees don't contribute to the hive at all. They eat resources. They don't leave the hive. They don't go and forage. They don't help look after the babies. They literally are just born to go and mate. So when they go and mate with the queen actually takes the genitalia from the drone and the drone dies. If the drone doesn't get lucky when it leaves the hive, it's not allowed back into the hive. So quite often I'll see a sad little bunch of drone bees sitting out the front here, and I know that they've gone out to mate and they didn't get lucky. And they're not actually allowed back in the hive. So yes, interesting. Oh, we've got another queen cell here. A couple of
Have you
queen
spotted
cells.
the queen in your
No,
search yet?
no. So I actually don't spend a lot of time looking for my queen. I know she's there because there's so much fresh larva. Like, she's laid within the last 3 days, 3 to 5 days, CLD. So I know she's in there somewhere. But I don't spend a lot of time looking for her, to be honest. I'm actually going to take this frame and put it in our new hive. See all the pollen? There's so much pollen down there. There's all fresh larva. And not that you're going to be able to see, but the eggs are like a tiny grain of rice. And we don't have much sun, so that's a bit tricky. So when I split this, I'll take this whole frame with all the nurse bees, because the nurse bees are actually looking after those babies, and I'll put it in the new hive. So I know that there's lots of bees hatching from those frames. So there's going to be lots of new bees coming in there. There was some honey on that frame, so they're going to have food to eat. Have a look on this one. Oh.
Is there a risk that a queen won't be made from that frame that you've just moved?
There is a small risk, and that's the reason why I'm really looking for, there's eggs in here. That's the reason I'm looking for those eggs, because I know if there's plenty of eggs in there, what they'll do is they'll realize, hey, we can't smell our queen anymore. We're queenless. We've quickly got to make a new queen. And they'll probably make half a dozen queen cells. Queen cell there. These are just practice cells. There's nothing in them. They've obviously just been a bit bored. I'm fairly confident that there's enough eggs. Yeah, there's eggs in there. That they'll be able to create a new queen. And they'll create 6 queen cells, 6 new queens, and they'll wait for them all to be born. And then they'll pick their favorite and they'll kill off the rest. And the way that they kill them off is usually by smothering them. So the bees will all gather around them and suffocate them. And so a lot of people think that the queen's in charge of the hive. She's not. It's the worker bees. They're the ones who signal when she's a bit long in the tooth or she's not laying up to potential, and they'll kill her off. So just to give you a bit of an idea of, oh, look at all that honey. An idea of how many eggs she's laying a day. So in at this time of the year, the queen can be laying anywhere up to 2,000 eggs a day. So that's why numbers are growing exponentially at this time. Have a look at all the bees in the bottom of the box there. So just going to grab some extra frames because I've taken frames out. I need to fill that box.
They don't like the empty spaces?
No, and the empty spaces also, they'll fill it. They'll free comb, and that's really hard to get out because they'll literally just build the comb in there without any form. But also it is sort of a welcome for any kind of pest because it's a big space to guard for them. These are what we call stickies. So I've spun honey out of these. They look disgusting, but it means that the bees they'll just clean it up and they'll make new fresh comb on it. There's also a little bit of honey, so it's a little bit of food in there. What I do is I freeze the frames before I put them back in the hive, and it just kills off any pests that potentially could be lurking in that frame. These guys aren't too cranky. So sometimes when a hive is really cranky, it can signal to me that there's something wrong with the queen. So if this hive was queenless, they'd be really, really ferocious. They'd be hitting our veil and getting quite cranky at us because they know that they don't have a queen in there. I'm just going to...
There's no risk that you accidentally like shook the queen out in
possibly,
doing this?
yeah, possibly. We can go back and have another look, actually. I'm just going to double check. If I have taken the other queen, because there's lots of other frames of brood and eggs in there, if I've taken the queen and put her in this new hive, she'll just become the queen of this hive. They'll grow a new queen in the other hive. So they will know just from now, if they can't smell their queen anymore, that will signal to them straight away that they need to get building and start feeding an egg. Let's see if we can find her. I always get asked if I mark my queens. So some people do mark their queens. It's like a bit of a tattoo on the back. And depending on the year, they will mark them in a different color. I think this year is red. Oh, I don't actually know. Don't keep up with it because I don't mark my queens, but they just put a dot on her back. The reason people do that, especially commercial beekeepers do that, is they want a nice young queen that's laying lots and lots of eggs. And by doing that, they can easily find her, but also know when she's born. So they don't want a queen that's 5 years old. They want a queen that's 1 or 2 years old because she's going to be at her prime. I'm pretty certain I don't have the queen in this box. There's a lot of pollen in there though. I'm going to close this up and I'm going to show you another box that I requeened last week because what happened, I'll just quickly show you this. So this is a plastic frame. And Jess knows I'm a bit of a purist. I don't like plastic in my hive. But I bought this. This is another way that beekeepers do their frames out of plastic because it's a lot easier to clean. So basically just scrape the old foam off and start again. With these other ones, sorry, there's a bit of noise. With the wooden frames and the foundation, you do have to replace the foundation every couple of years because it gets too dark and you can taint the taste of your honey. Whenever I've used this plastic frame before, the bees didn't touch it. So it'll be interesting to see if this particular hive's going to be snobby and not touch the plastic frame. They're starting to get a little bit cross now, so I better close this up. When I put these back on, look, there's always going to be casualties, but I do try and be a little bit careful that they don't get squashed. So the queen excluder goes between, so the queen's in the bottom box. Can you hear the bees?
No. Is that how you know they're getting cranky? They're getting louder?
Yeah. And it's just because we've disturbed the nest, the babies. And you'll notice that I've got my number on there. So it is a requirement in Queensland that you register your beehives, even if you're a hobby beekeeper. You register with the DPI and they give you a biosecurity number. So it's much like having livestock. Bees are considered livestock, so you have to register them. It's also a great way of keeping on top of any pests because the DPI will notify you if there's pests around your area.
Have you had any instances of Aurora coming that far up?
No, but we are required to test for Varroa now routinely. And this is the risk, I think. And, when I'm talking about registered hives, not all beekeepers register their hives. So therefore, they're not on top of pests and diseases. The hives that are swarming are obviously not registered beehives. And so therefore, they're not being checked for diseases. So that's why it's really important that we are checking hives and making sure that they're not swarming. I'm going to relight my smoker, and we're going to go right down to the end, Jess.
And what do you do if you see a beehive swarming? I've actually
Yeah,
seen this happen.
you have. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we're
so
just out for
incredible.
a walk. Yeah.
It's yes, you call a beekeeper. The amount of time, like on community pages, that people have tagged me, when people have gone, I've got a bee swarm. Who do I contact? And people comment, contact a pest control. I'm like, no, stop. Contact a beekeeper. Swarms are really easy to catch, and I caught a swarm on the weekend, and it was huge. Like there were more bees in this swarm than there was in that whole hive that we just looked at. It was a huge swarm. I'll come down to the end, Jess. Um, and what had happened, I sort of asked this person a few questions about it, and her neighbour has a beehive, and she said, I've never seen him check it. So they had a swarm the week before, and I'd say the hive has become honey bound. So there's been so much honey in the beehive that they've run out of room for the bees. And so the bees actually leave. And this swarm that I caught would have been the remainder of the hive that's taken off. So he won't have any bees left. He'll have a whole lot of honey that the ants will probably take. And I have new bees. But yeah, just call a beekeeper. We come, put them in a hive. They're really, really calm because they've got no hive to protect. So swarm bees are the calmest bees that you'll find. So this is empty. The top box is just for show. So what happened a few weeks ago in a storm? We get really hectic wind here, windy acres, and the wind. We got a whirly wind through, and it actually knocked this whole stand over with the beehives. And the beehives smashed into the ground, and in the process must have killed the queen. So when I looked at this hive the other day, it was actually queenless. So what I did, much like I've just done down the end there, I grabbed a frame of brood out of another hive and popped it into this hive to give them a bit of a boost. There was still bees in here, but they had no queen. And yeah, so see how they're a bit louder, Jess? Yeah.
We've just had a question come through.
Sure.
Said, amazing presentation and very educational. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is from Lars, who's part of a community garden at the University of Tasmania in Launceston. And he's asked what suggestions you would have for keeping bees in a very public space, and how often do you need to actively monitor and maintain them?
Great question. So it's an interesting one. I get a lot of people. So I do a beekeeping basics course. So it's basically for people who want to keep bees but need some guidance on how to start. And the first thing people always ask is, I live in town. Can I keep honeybees in town? So the first thing you'd need to check is with your local council. So where was it? Tasmania. So check with the council and just see if there's any regulations on different places in that particular area that you can actually own a hive, because in some places, if it's fairly built up residential, you can't actually keep bees. So that would be the first thing. The second thing to think about is any neighbouring properties. And I always say to people, you don't have to ask permission from the neighbours, but just mention to them that you're going to get bees. And the first thing they'll say is, oh, I'm so allergic. A lot of people think they're allergic. They get a reaction, but an allergy is anaphylaxis. So that's something to consider, because if there are people with anaphylaxis around, it's probably not in your best interest to be putting hives in. The other option that you have is getting a native bee hive. So native bee hive, you basically really don't need to check on them that often, but you won't get honey from them. They're great at pollinating. It's really nice to have them in the garden, but there's no ongoing maintenance as much as honeybees. So during spring and summer with your honeybees, like we're checking maybe every 2 weeks. So there would need to be someone in the community garden that's going to commit to that, or a couple of people that are going to take it in turns checking on it. The native bees, yeah. So Jess just asked, is it true that they're stingless? Yeah. So native bees are stingless. We call them tickle bees. The kids call them tickle bees because they land on you and they tickle you. So I'm not quite sure about the native bees in Tasmania, but there would definitely be native bees that you can um, buy from someone in Tasmania, and that would probably might be my first step, is to get native bees in the community garden, because it is a lot of work to have honeybees, and making sure that people are maintaining them, and also in a public space where there's lots of people all the time, the likelihood of getting stung is that little bit higher. Does
Yeah,
that answer the
definitely.
question? Yeah.
And Lars, it might be worth looking at the University of Melbourne. They have a beehive on their campus, which one of the professors there, who is a beekeeper, created his own design for the hive, and it has this chimney um,
Yeah.
attached to the top of it.
Yeah.
So they have a hive in a very public garden, and yeah, the bees come in and out of the top of the
Yeah.
chimney.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. So in built up areas like capital cities, a lot of people put the beehives on the roof of high rises to keep them out of the path of people, obviously on the ground, that are mingling. If you have them on the roof, then their flight path is a lot higher than people level. Okay, let's have a look at these guys and see what's happened. So last week, you know how I was talking about the drone brood? What happens when a hive becomes queenless is one worker bee pretends to be the queen. And because she's not a queen, all she can lay is drone brood. Okay, so see how this is so different to the other frame. There's no brood on that whatsoever. That is an issue because there's no baby. Okay, see here. See this guy? This is a drone. See how much bigger he is? There's a couple of drones there. They're much bigger than the worker bees.
And they just haven't been kicked out yet.
No. So if there's a worker bee only laying drone brood, there's going to be a lot of drones hatching. And because they don't do anything, there won't be any nectar or pollen coming in from them. They'll just be using up the resources. So a hive can die out really quickly if that happens. Let me have a look here. Okay, there's nectar. Uh-huh. Yeah, okay, look at this. So this is the frame of brood I put in on Friday. Queen cell, queen cell, queen cell, queen cell. These are capped queen cells. So they've built themselves new queens. So they've done exactly what I wanted them to do. They've built a new queen with the eggs that I left for them. And yeah, they're being quite protected. That's why they're so loud, Jess, because they're queenless. It's okay. Just take a breath. So I'm really happy with that. I'm happy. They've got a couple of options. Here's another bee hatching.
So how long will it take for those queens to hatch now?
Yeah, not long. Because they're capped, they're nearly at the end and they hatch quite quickly. So what will happen once she's feeding this queen? See if we can see her in there. Oh yeah, we can. Have a look into the queen cell. Can you see the queen larva? The pink
Yes.
there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So
Oh
they're
wow.
feeding her royal jelly, getting her to grow. And you know how I said they hedge their bets multiple ways? That's why they've built so many queen cells. And they'll just pick the best one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 queen cells on this frame. Oh yeah, another one on that side. Oh, there's 2 down the bottom there. So they've really gone to town, made sure. And I'm just going to be really careful putting that back in because I don't want to squash those queen cells. Sorry, Ree, what was your question?
Oh, I don't even remember. I was
Yeah. So, how long do
Oh,
they
how
take to
long?
hatch? So they'll
Yeah.
hatch probably in the next couple of days. And then what I will expect will happen is after the queens hatch, they'll work out which one they want to keep, kill off the rest, like I said before. And then that queen will go on a mating flight. So she's born a virgin. Then she'll go on a mating flight. So the drones from the other hive, it's funny, the queen lets out a little whistle. It's very playground like. She calls all the boys from the yard and they all come out of the other hive when they hear her whistle, like a little chirp. All the other drones will come out and it looks like a swarm. You know how you said you've seen a swarm and they all swirl around in the air? They do this big mating, I won't say what I usually call it, big mating swarm in the air, big swirl. She mates with as many drones as she possibly can in that mating flight, because then that semen will last her whole lifetime. So she really needs to fill up with as many drones as she possibly can. Once she's mated, which it might take 20 minutes or so, and sometimes I've mistaken it for an actual swarm and I've come running out and stood in the middle of this mating swarm. And then I know that it's a mating swarm, because then, pardon? The bees. It's okay. They can't get in. I'm just going to smoke you. Calm you down. Calm her down. Calm her down. Yeah. Okay. We'll move away. They're cranky because they have no queen. So once she's mated, she will go back. Sometimes she takes a few friends with her. You know, it's a girl gang. She'll take a few friends out for her mating flight. The drones that don't get lucky die. She goes back to the hive, and then basically she just starts laying. So what I'll do is I'll check this hive in a week's time. So she will have hatched by then. She'll have been on her mating flight, and I should see new eggs being laid in there. So I'm actually really excited that there's that many queen cells, because that's success.
So where does are you bringing genetic diversity in if all the hives are sort of next to each other? Like, how does?
Yeah, great question. So this year I bought new queens from a friend of mine. She's a commercial beekeeper. But I bought new queens from her just to bring in a bit of diversity. She's also had a lot of success breeding queens that are varroa resistant. Look, I'm not sure how that happens. That's her thing. But because she's beekeeping over the border and down south, they've really been doing a lot of work with that. And I have found, sorry, I'm having trouble here. I have found her queens to be really quiet. Like the bees that she's laying are not as savage. So different breeds of bees have different temperaments, different productivity. So I've had a bit of a mix of Italian bees. They're good honey producers. They can be a bit savage. Then I bought some Caucasians, which aren't great at protecting their hive. Like, they're more likely to be susceptible to pests. And then there's Carniolans, which aren't great honey producers but are really fierce. Let's move away from the cranky bees, hey?
I think I heard Jess's sigh.
Yeah, she said she can't actually believe the difference in those hives. Just the difference between a calm hive and you know what? Once they've requeened, they won't be cranky like that. It's just that they know they don't have a queen, so they're being extra protective. You probably noticed, talking about pests, you probably noticed. So this is our new little hive. Look at the bees coming and going in here. So this is the one we just split. Yeah. You probably noticed this hanging out the bottom. This is what we call an apathaur trap. So this is something that I use in my hives to stop hive beetle. So a small hive beetle in a hive can kill out a hive really quickly. So any kind of these pests like varroa, hive beetle, wax moth, they all feed on the brood, the baby. And what they can do is deform the developing bees, which means that they're not growing up and fulfilling all their jobs. So in a bee's lifetime, they have many different jobs. Their first job in the hive is to clean the hive. Their next job is to feed the babies. Then as they get older, their very last job in their life is to go out and forage. So if bees aren't making it to that age, then you don't have any pollen and nectar coming into the hive. So that can mean the end of the hive. So if the babies are dying, like in their first week of life, we're not getting any older bees that are doing the older jobs in the hive. So pests coming in and killing or deforming those bees that aren't going to grow into adults basically means the end of a hive. And what happens is the pest numbers increase exponentially, kills more of the developing babies, and then, yeah, the hive dies out and the pest takes over, basically. So this apathaur trap, it's by Bentham. Don't love the idea of having chemical in the hive, but what happens is the bees actually chase these little hive beetles into the trap, the hive beetles get caught in the trap and eat the bifenthrin, and then they die. So there's no chemical actually being sprayed in the hive. It's all contained in that little trap, and the hive beetles are in that trap.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does. It does. Amazing.
Have a look at this.
So we are getting close. We've still got a few minutes, and I would like to ask a couple questions, and I invite anybody in the audience to ask them as well. My number one thing is, okay, I'm ready to go and buy a bee suit and just have my own bees. What is my first thing to do now is to go and do like a beekeeping course, find somebody to mentor.
So find a mentor or do a beekeeping course. A lot of people do it the other way around. I have a lot of people who come to my beekeeping course and they say, oh, such and such bought me a flow hive for Christmas 5 years ago and it's been sitting in the garden ever since and I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. So the first thing you need to do is educate yourself. And doing it just depends on how you learn. And if you're watching today, I'm guessing you're a visual learner. So buying a book that's going to sit on your bedside table is probably not the best way of learning. I think a face-to-face.
I have a book on beekeeping.
That's been sitting on your bedside table for ages. So there's some great books. So the Australian Beekeepers Manual is the best book because it's Australian. There's a lot of books that you can buy from bookstores, but they're not specific for Australia. So the Australian Beekeeping Handbook by Robert Owen is your number one. Getting in touch with your local beekeeping association. There can be lots of experts in the beekeeping association, and I think it's just about finding people that are like-minded. So I have a lot of people who've done my beekeeping course, and we just keep in contact. We've got a closed Facebook group, and they're all at the same stage, and they've all learnt the same thing with me. So it's a good little group. And through that beekeeping association, you'll be able to find a reputable breeder. So someone who's got good, healthy bees that you can buy. The first lot of bees that you will buy is called a nucleus or a nuke. And it's basically what we've just done here. So it's a split, but what the person who's selling you the nuke will do is wait for that queen to hatch and start laying, and then they will sell it to you. Pardon? It's ready to go. It's ready to put, so you will get it in a smaller box, and a good reputable breeder will actually go through it with you. You will come to their place and they will put those frames into your box and they will talk you through and show you what's going on. You want to know that you've got a healthy hive. You don't want to buy a diseased nucleus and take it home and start on the back foot. And that's my biggest recommendation. View your bees before you buy them. Don't go and pick them up and they'll say you can come at nightfall and pick them up. No, I want to come and have a look at them first. I want to see that there's no disease. And by doing a beekeeping course before that, you'll know what you're looking for. You're looking for a good brood pattern. You're looking for honey stores. You're looking for nectar. You're looking for pollen. All of those things that we saw on those frames that we put into this box. Yeah, you can watch this back and have a look at those frames that we took out. They're a good, healthy hive. And then you saw down the end what a not very healthy hive looked like. There was no brood on some of those frames. You don't want to buy a nucleus that has empty frames, that has no brood on them whatsoever, because the hive is not going to thrive. Beekeeping course, get the book, join a club, watch lots of YouTube videos. There's thousands of YouTube videos. A lot of them are American, or even there's some European beekeepers too. It's all mostly the same, but just make sure that you remember that if you asked one beekeeper the same question, if you ask 10 beekeepers the same question, you probably get 15 different answers. So what works for one person doesn't work for the other, but that's how you should start. Don't just go and buy a hive. There are different hives that you can buy. So these are Langstroth hives, traditional Langstroth hives. I also do have a flow hive. I'm not even going to start on the flow hive.
Oh, that was my next question, because they're very popular.
We're going to go there. Okay, we're going to go there. So I'm not against flow hives. I think it's been ingenious what they've done, and they've marketed it, like their marketing team, hats off, because they've marketed it as an easy honey on tap, ready to go. My experience, and the reason I started doing beekeeping courses, is that the beekeepers weren't doing the theory and knowing how to look after the bees before they got the honey. So one of my first call outs was to catch a swarm. This guy had swarmed over the fence. I said, has anyone in your area got a beehive? Oh, yeah, I've got a beehive. I said, well, they're from your bees. Oh, no, I've still got bees in my hive. Okay, but have you checked for queen cells and what's your brood like? He's like, I've got honey. And I'm like, no, the honey is just the end product. We're talking about the health of your hive. Anyway, long story short, the bee swarmed a week or 2 weeks again later. He'd harvested all the honey out of the flow frames and left the bees with no honey. They starved and swarmed and took off on him. So he was left with no bees. I got 3 bees, and he got his little bit of honey. So my thing with flow hives is, yeah, they're great, but make sure you do your homework and make sure you know how to look after the bees. The honey, you might have to wait 12 months or 18 months to get your first harvest, and that's with any hive. Looking after the health of your bees is your main priority. So the flow hives are really, really expensive. Like you're saying 1,800, maybe 2.5 for a flow hive. These hives probably only cost $500 to set up. Yes, you do need a spinner, but a spinner's a couple of $100. And I feel that it's a little bit more of a natural way of beekeeping. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of plastic, but that's just my personal opinion. I think flow hives definitely have their place. The other option too is a top bar hive, and it's something that I have been promoting a lot for people who want bees. They're not necessarily wanting a heap of honey out of their hive, but they want honeybees. They want a little bit of honey. They like the thought of naturally beekeeping. So it's based on like ancient beekeeping. So the Egyptians used to keep bees in logs, and so they'd keep the log flat, and then they'd have little bars across the top, and the bees form their comb. So instead of going up, it goes across, and it's a much more natural way of beekeeping. So have a look into that too if you're looking at different options. Sorry, Rhea, I hope I haven't popped your little flow hive bubble. Like I said, I'm not against it.
I just know that, like you said, they're marketed really well, and I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, this is a good entryway into beekeeping, but probably not.
Oh, look, it has its place, but I think as long as you've done your homework and you know how to look after the bees, and you know that you can't go in and harvest all of the honey in the hive, yeah, I think you'll be okay. It's not a set and forget. No beehive other than not even a native beehive. You do have to check on them from time to time. If they are a managed hive that you've brought in, you definitely have to check on them. And a flow hive, you definitely have to check on every couple of weeks during spring and summer too, like any other hive. Yeah.
And overall, do you think, is this an expensive hobby to, I don't know if it's the right word.
Look, my husband, I wanted one hive. We're 5 years down the track and we now have 20 hives. So the thing is, each year you're going to need to split your bees. So if you start with 1 beehive this year, next year you're definitely going to have 2 beehives. And the year after, those 2 are going to turn into 4. So you could sell those splits like a nucleus. You could sell them and make a little bit of money. I look, as in terms of hobbies, I don't think it's an expensive hobby. I think it gives back just as much as you put into it. I often say it's really meditative for me. Like, we've been out here how long? And it feels like I've been out here for 5 minutes, because the hum of the bees, they've likened it to the hum of the Tibetan monks, the meditative, like you get into a bit of a trance. So I could be out here for hours and not even realize because of the hum. But yeah, once you've set up with your initial bees and your initial hive, I think it's not that expensive. And if you can get your beehive sponsored, then that's it's time. I think the biggest expense really is time, like making sure that you are committed, and that during spring and summer, every couple of weeks, at least every 3 weeks, I need to check my hives, make sure that they're healthy, make sure that they're not becoming honey bound, making sure they've got enough to eat, and making sure that your garden, if your garden and your neighbours are going to be, there's enough food to sustain the bees throughout the year, especially if you live in colder climates. The bees still need to eat during winter. There still needs to be pollen and nectar coming into the hive. So, that's part of the learning too.
So I've got two questions from that,
Sure.
but first one it's actually come through from the audience. What's a good environment for hive placement, as in shaded, sunny, good soil drainage, plants, that sort of thing?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So, you'll notice that all of my hives are out in the open here. My hive, I don't know, can they see over there where the other hives are? I've got some gum trees over there that give afternoon shade. So we get quite hot afternoons, and those beehives are usually in the shade of an afternoon. Um, they're quite exposed to the elements. We get quite cold winters here. I've gone with a ventilated base, and this is something that you'll do a bit of reading about if you're looking into different hives. So this is a ventilated base, so there's air coming up. You'll notice too that I've got extra lids on here to give a bit of extra shade and a bit of extra ventilation. If I only had this lid, this is gal, and it would get really, really hot and cook those bees. So if you're just going with a gal roof, you need to make sure that you've got some shade for your bees. A lot of people use, like if they've got them out in the open, they'll probably just put a bit of shade cloth over the top, just have like a bit of a pergola. Making sure that your hive is stable. Like I said, my hive blew over, and that was a bit of a freak thing, but making sure that it's on solid ground is a good thing. Even I've had a lot of people who've just put them on a concrete slab, because you will have to get in around, see how the grass is growing up around these hives. I mowed here last week. But any kind of grass that's going up into the hive is going to invite pests in, like ants and mice and frogs and toads and all of that sort of thing. So if you've got it on a slab, then that means that you don't have to get in with the mower, because when I mow, I have to mow in my suit and I look like a bit of an idiot. But yeah, if you've got it on a slab, then at least then you know that it's free from any debris. In a residential yard, I always say have a look at the flight path. You don't want them flying directly into your back door. Always face your hive north, because it's not going to get the sunrise directly in the door of the morning, or the sunset directly in the door of an afternoon. And most of the
Jump
time,
in. Yes, you accidentally turned the camera off.
you don't need to listen. You can still hear me though.
I can still hear you. Yeah, we just can't
I'll
see
keep
anything.
talking and Jess will work out the camera. Yeah, so north facing, all of my hives are north facing, because the storm, we don't usually get rain coming in from the north. And all of any rural shed in this area, they all open to the north. So that's the way we face out. There is a way, if you've got a really small yard, you could face your hive directly to the fence, like away from the fence, but directly to the fence. And it actually makes the bees fly upwards straight away. So they're not flying across your yard or across your neighbour's yard. They literally come out of the hive and have to go directly up into the air. I'll just demonstrate. So you could have this. Can you see me?
Yes, we've got video back.
Okay. So the front of the hive, you could have it up against a fence. So if this is the fence here, instead of the bees flying gently upwards out like they are at the moment, they have to come up and they fly directly up. So that stops bees flying across people's backyards or across your yard if you've got children or if you've got a small yard. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Like landing in Queenstown.
Yeah. Or on Hamilton Island, you just sort of have to go straight out of the air. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, the other part of that sort of similar question is, if you are in a colder climate where there's not going to be a lot of flowers around, is this still a viable thing for you to do?
Absolutely. There are beehives in the snow. So you just have to winterize, that's the technical term, your beehive. And even here, because we do get down below zero, I have learnt through trial and error to pack my bees down. So you'll hear beekeepers say packing your bees down for winter. And in Tasmania, they definitely do it. In the southern states, some of them do and some of them don't. And what it means is creating a smaller space for your bees, because obviously they're all going to bundle together in a ball to keep warm, much like we do if we're cold. And if you've got 2 levels, that's a really big space to keep warm. So what I do is I take the honey super off during winter and I pack them down so they've only got 1 box. The other thing that happens in winter in colder climates is that the queen reduces laying. So she's cutting back laying as much so that she doesn't have as many mouths to feed. So giving them a smaller space, doesn't mean that they're going to swarm. It just gives them less mouths to feed to keep them going. There will still be things flowering in winter, and you'll get really good at knowing what to plant that's going to flower in winter. And remembering, and I didn't say this, but honeybees have a forage radius of 5 kilometres. So if you think about where you're going to put your beehive, 5 kilometres out from your place is their supermarket. So if you don't have something in your yard, surely there might be something in the next block that might have something flowering. So it's definitely viable in the colder climates. We get below zero and my bees keep going all through winter. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, we are almost out of time.
I can't believe that. That went really fast.
It did, and it's so interesting. I feel like I could sit here and ask you questions all day.
Please
but
do. Right, Jess's arm's about to fall off.
Yeah, so I think we will wrap up.
Sure.
If you've got any final tips or anything you want to give us in the last couple of minutes, then by all means.
I was just going to extend an invitation. If you do have questions, follow-up questions that you think about after we finish today, feel free to message me or even email me through our business email. I'm always happy to talk about bees and always happy to help in any way that I can. Like I said, I don't know all the answers, but I can always find out, or I can give you what's worked for me. But it's just such an enjoyable hobby. Like it is, pardon the pun, it is a real buzz. And I think once you get started, like I've had people who are really nervy and they're like, oh, what if we mess it up? The bees are really smart. They've been around for millions of years. They know what they're doing. And even if you do make a mistake, they'll fix it up. And I often say, oh, don't worry about that. The bees will fix it. They literally do. They know what they're doing. And sometimes we've just got to trust what they're doing and not try and control them. We really are sort of keepers of the bees, not the boss of the bees. So that's my final tip. Just trust the bees and enjoy the process.
Amazing. That's such good advice. And thank you so much for your time, and Jess,
you're very welcome.
for being her arm. There. Yeah, I'm so glad that the rain held off and the bees weren't angry. So thank you for rescheduling, and everybody for your patience.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope anyone who wants to start beekeeping, just give a bit of a hint to family and loved ones. Like, you could get me a beekeeping course for Christmas, and don't buy the hive, just buy the beekeeping course so that you can figure out what you want for yourself.
Such good advice. You can't see it, but we've had lots of hearts and claps coming up on the screen.
Oh, so. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, we'll let you get back to the rest of the day. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on our last Acts of Connection for the year. We'll be back next year with a whole range of other amazing demonstrations and sessions for you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.